Hi guys, James at Rampant Lion Reviews again for you today with another beer review. For this one, we are going to stick to Sweden and we're going to return to a brewery that has featured on the channel a good number of times before. I've had some really nice beers from these guys over the years, lots of different styles, but I would say this brewery are known mainly for their kind of lighter, more sessionable styles of beer. The golden ales, the lagers, the kind of lighter sours and things like this. But for this review, we're actually going to go to a style that they haven't done too many of. This is their kind of breakout into this style, I guess we could say, and we're rounding off my reviews of a 3-part release that they did for April of 2021. So yeah, curious to see how this one turns out because the other two beers were quite interesting. So let's see how we get on then. For this review, we are going to head up to the capital once again, Stockholm, and we're having a look at another beer from Stockholm Brewing Company. So this particular beer is called Ain't No Half Steppin'. It comes in at 6% ABV, and this one is a New England hazy, whatever you want to call it, IPA. So this beer was released as part of the local Småskalig assortment through Systembolaget here in Sweden for April of 2021, as I kind of said a minute ago, and it was released along with two other New England IPAs. That was the Make Me Smile, which was the first one I reviewed, and then the Kicking Up Sand, which was the second one I reviewed. The Make Me Smile was a European hopped one. The Kicking Up Sand was a South Pacific hopped beer, whereas this one is an American hopped one. So yeah, all the same base beer from what I understand, just different hop bills. So yeah, I've got an idea of what to expect from this one, but hopefully it is as good as the other ones we've had before. The thing I like about Stockholm Brewing is their beers always have this kind of little bit of a farmhousey vibe about them, which I always enjoy because they're a bit different from the other things that are out there on the market. But yeah, 6% New England IPA, this one hopped with American hops, and hopefully it's as good as the other ones. So yeah, let's see how we get on with this one then. Always nice to return to Stockholm Brewing Company, of course. So yeah, let's see how we get on. As always with my reviews then, I'll tell you a little bit about the brewery before we taste the beer. If you want to get straight to the tasting, just fast forward. All the usual links are in the video description below. That's the brewery website, the link to my other reviews that I've done from Stockholm Brewing Company before, and you will no doubt see more added to that list in the near future. There's all the usual social media down there. If you want to see more reviews, do please consider subscribing to the channel. The whole channel, of course, has a geography-based tagging system, so you can go into the homepage and search for beer based on country, city, state, county, province, prefecture, whatever it is you happen to be interested in. Do check out the playlists of beers from different countries. There is one there for all the Swedish beers that I've reviewed for you. That's constantly being added to, and as always, please do get in touch and let me know some of the other beers and breweries that you guys would like to see me review. It's always great to hear from you guys that are watching the videos, and the support that you show the channel is hugely appreciated. So anyway, to tell you a little bit about Stockholm Brewing Company then, on to my brewery notes. So Stockholm Brewing, as the name tells you, and as I told you earlier, are based in Stockholm, the Swedish capital, and the company was founded back in 2012 by Niklas Jakobsson, Thomas Hallgren and Niklas Lenkel. So they were apparently the first craft brewery in Sweden to open up a tasting bar at the brewery, and that sort of paved the way for many other breweries to follow suit. You know, it's kind of how it goes. One brewery gets the laws changed a little bit, and then everyone else kind of follows on from that and does what they've done. But yeah, over the first few years, they continued to grow fairly steadily. By 2016, they were producing around 150,000 litres of beer, and the brewery were originally based in Söder in Stockholm, but they moved in 2018 to a new place in an old brick house at Frihamnen out in the east of the city, and they also had a restaurant there as well. But they had a collaboration with a small farm outside of Stockholm, which was called the Karshamla Trädgård, and a chunk of the things that they were using in the restaurant were actually coming from there. And Agnes and Maurits, the farmers, they were involved in the restaurant as well. But the restaurant went bust, unfortunately, and they did start to reopen it for lunch and things like that, but I'm not actually sure how well that's kind of gone and things like that. I'll need to look into that actually for the next review we do from these guys. But yeah, hopefully they can open that up again, and I do hope that I can get out to the brewery at some point and have a little look at their tasting bar and things like that. That would be very cool. But the current brewer they have is Michael Alin Vigart, who is assisted by Albin and Max, and they've also got Sweden's first commercial coolship as well, so they're going to produce many more sour beers over the next little while. But they invested in 2 fodders in 2019, and then in 2020 they invested in a new 2,000 litre brew kit, which took their capacity up considerably to around 300,000 litres of beer per year. And as I said, these guys tend to focus on, you know, the sort of more sessionable styles of beer, the golden ales, the sort of lager beers and things like this, and also the sort of lighter end of the sour beer spectrum, although they've got a few different things coming out at the moment. As I say, these are their first attempts at New England IPAs as far as I know, but they were also affiliated with the company Wine Trade, which was run by Ollie Bartlett, but he's now managing the brewery and the company, so he's very heavily involved in Stockholm Brewing Company. He's really nice actually. He sends me a lot of information after every video about that I do about the brewery to keep me up to date with what's going on, so that is pretty cool of him to do that. So big shout out to Ollie, of course, as we always do. But as of April 2021, when I'm filming this review for you, these guys have produced around 190 different kinds of beer according to Untappd, and that will no doubt increase over the next little while. But yeah, that's all I can really tell you about Stockholm Brewing Company for the moment. If you want to learn more about these guys, you can check out the brewery website, you can follow them on Facebook and Instagram to keep up to date with all the latest goings on, and you can of course check out the Rate Beer, Untappd and Beer Advocate pages to learn more about all the different beers that these guys have done. And hopefully at some stage I can get up to Stockholm and film a kind of meet the brewery segment with these guys. That would be really fun to do actually. But yeah, that's great. And that is it for your history section. So yeah, go and follow them on Facebook and Instagram. Check out the Rate Beer and Untappd pages, as I said, and you can check out their website too. So yeah, let's get cracking then and see how we get on with this beer. So as you can see, the artwork on this one is quite similar to what we've had from Stockholm Brewing Company before. As I say, this beer is called Ain't No Half Steppin', 6% New England Hazy, whatever you want to call it, IPA, and the hops in this one are Laurel, Cashmere and Chinook. So Laurel is quite an interesting one. It's got quite an earthy, herbal sort of thing. But it's got a little bit of a kind of lemony citrus and a wee bit of a kind of darker fruit there as well. Cashmere has a lot of melon, but it's also got a big lemon limey presence too, and it's quite big and floral. And Chinook, as we know, I always think Chinook is a very good bittering hop. Lots of kind of strong grapefruit, big piney resinous notes, and it's just, you know, it's just a beast of a hop. That Chinook is one of the kind of classic American sort of high alpha acid hops, if you like. Laurel is a bit newer to the scene. Cashmere's been around for a couple of years, but I think this one could make for a very interesting beer actually. A very interesting hop bill on this one, I have to say. I've never had these hops in combination as far as I know. But the name of this beer, of course, I should tell you that as well, it's taken from the Big Daddy Kane track from 1988. I've never listened to it, so I'll need to do that after this review. But yeah, 440ml can this one. It came in at about 45 Swedish kroner, which is roughly about €4.50, £4 sterling, and maybe about $5.25, $5.50 American, depending on the exchange rate. But yeah, let's get this guy out and we'll get on with the tasting then. Very curious to try the last in this series of beers from Stockholm Brewing Company, and the one that I'm going to review from these guys next month I think should be quite nice as well. But yeah, these beers, I should also say, these 3 New England IPAs that they've done use Simpson's extra pale malt apparently, so yeah, it's kind of interesting. I think that is a bit of a favourite of theirs, from judging by these beers and comparing them to some of the other ones we've had before. But yeah, as you can see, this one's poured quite nicely. So you can see before the head disappears, we've poured about maybe 3/4 of it into the glass. We'll put the rest in a little bit. But you can see it poured with about a 1/4 finger of a frothy, I would say kind of creamy coloured head. I don't know if that's perfect white, but it's faded away very, very quickly to just leave a kind of thin wispy layer over the surface. But yeah, 1 or 2 big bubbles sticking towards the side of the glass, a few little ones going up towards the bottom of the head. And in terms of the colour of this beer, I would say that this one is a lovely kind of bright yellow mango juice colour. I think it looks a lot brighter on the camera to you guys than it does to me with the naked eye, but it certainly looks very nice. Remember, the colour of these beers is dependent on 1, the type of malts that you use, and 2, the length of your wort boil. Adjuncts and barrel aging will also affect that, but those variables are not at play in this particular beer. And a New England IPA like this is going to undergo a boil of like 70 to 90 minutes, something like that. But the longer you boil the wort, the more the sugars caramelise, thus you get a darker colour of beer. But I always like comparing these New England IPAs to different fruit juices, because that's just what they remind me of. But with this one, you can see the haze level on this is not, it's not one of the soupiest and gloopiest of New England IPAs that I've come across before, but remember, the level of haze in these beers is dependent on the wheat and the oak content, and that tends to vary from brewery to brewery. So yeah, Certainly looks the part of a New England IPA. Nothing too much else to say on the appearance, so let's take a closer look at the aroma and see how we go on. I think this could well be one of the most interesting part of this one, but we'll see. Oh yeah, that is quite interesting for sure. The thing with Kashmir is, I've had this in a couple of beers. There's a brewery from Slovenia called Green Gold, and Luka Rojnik, it's his family's company actually. They've been hop farmers for like generations, and he loves Kashmir. So he started up his own brewery on the side of his hop farm, which is cool. That's how you should do it, you know. But yeah, he loves Kashmir, and he's produced a number of IPAs down there. And Kashmir has a really interesting, it interacts with certain yeasts really interestingly, and just sort of, it kind of promotes the sort of farmhousey side of things in a lot of beers. And you know, if you were going to pair Kashmir with any brewery in Sweden that are doing IPAs, it would be Stockholm, because of this sort of farmhousey vibe that they have. And you get that straight away with this beer. You can really smell the sort of Kashmiri notes out of this. It's lovely. So yeah, this might well turn out to be the best beer out of the three. But yeah, that is really interesting. I think the laurel's probably helping this as well, because you can smell a little bit of that more kind of herbally thing from the laurel in here as well. But I will say straight away, the first impression of this beer is quite farmhousey, and then it's quite sort of herbal and kind of citrusy and zesty at the same time. So yeah, I think this could be potentially very, very interesting. It smells very nice. But let's try and break this down a little bit more for you and describe it a little bit more kind of in detail, if you like. But yeah, backbone of this beer is a lovely sort of Jacob's cream crackery, grainy sort of thing. You can get that. That's one of the backbones things that you always get with these Stockholm Brewing beers. There's just this farmhousey element in there. There is a little touch of woodiness as well. You've got a nice kind of soft white bready note to this one, a little bit of bread crust, absolutely. And you can smell with this beer, you do get a little touch of a wheaty bitiness out of this one. Let me just check. Malt base, yeah. So this one, this actually does have oats in it as well. I wouldn't have been sure about the oats in this, in fairness, because just check this so that my OCD is happy. There we go. So yeah, I wasn't actually overly sure about the oats in this one. I could tell you that there was wheat in this because of the bitiness, but I think the sort of farmhousey and bready elements of this beer are kind of outshone a little bit, if you like, or pushed to the background by the more farmhousey element of this. But yeah, you definitely get a bit of a wheaty bite at the back of the nose. As I say, you've got sort of Jacob's cream crackery base to the beer. There's one or two little woody elements in there, a sort of soft kind of white bready note on top of that, a little bit of yeastiness as well. But can you get a wee bit of the oat out of this? You maybe can in the very centre of the nose. You do get a wee touch of a kind of, how would you say, you do get a little bit of a kind of Werther's Original kind of butter candy type thing out of this beer for sure. You do get quite a lot of that out of this beer in a sense, so that takes a little bit of time to come out. But the other thing to remember is I'm drinking this beer just a little touch older than the other ones, so with New England IPAs, when they get a little bit older, the wheat and the sort of oaty characters tend to just thicken up a wee bit in them. So maybe that's going on in here, and we have to keep that in mind to a certain extent. But the malty side of this beer, it smells, I think it comes across as a little bit more farmhousey than the other ones. But as I say, I feel that could be the influence of the Kashmir and potentially the laurel as well. And I'm just basing that on previous experience with those beers that I reviewed from Green Gold actually. So yeah, the malty and yeasty characters out of this beer are quite interesting, but for me this is typically Stockholm Brewing. As I say, if anyone asks me about Stockholm Brewing, I'd always say they've got this kind of farmhousey type vibe to their stuff actually, but it's not overly crazy, if you like. And if you think about some of the famous American breweries, it would be Alchemist would be the one I would think of that have this more kind of farmhousey sort of vibe to them actually. So keep that in mind. The New England IPAs aren't the big, thick, kind of creamy and sweet things that a lot of people think they are all the time in the States. Quite a few of them have, some of them have quite a bit of a rye component to them, and some of them have a little bit more of a farmhousey vibe like this, definitely. But yeah, malty and yeasty side of this beer is typically Stockholm Brewing. So yeah, on the hoppy side of things then, I think we've covered the malty and yeasty side as much as we really need to. But yeah, on the hoppy side of things then, you do get a little touch of earthiness out of this one. As I say, Laurel's going to give you that, Chinook potentially will give you a little touch of that as well. But the green component is really interesting because you do get a little touch of herbal quality at the back of the nose, but then you get the big, bright kind of green thing in there. You can smell the deep pine resins, but at the same time you get a really nice kind of floral aromaticity. I think Laurel is roughly about 11 or 12% alpha acid, if I remember rightly. I think Cashmere is a bit more, about 13, 14, and I think Chinook roughly sits in that 13, 14 bracket as well. So yeah, you definitely get a big green component of this one. So big, deep, piney resins, some nice floral aromaticity to it, a little touch spicy, and then some good kind of grassy esters in there as well. So yeah, I really like how this one goes about its green component. I think that offers a kind of nice bridge, if you like, with the kind of slightly bitier notes of the wheat too. But yeah, let's focus on the fruity side of things then. I think that covers the green component quite well. But yeah, with this one, as I say, there's a lot of citrusy zest to this. There's a big lemon-limey component, which is coming from both the Cashmere and from the Laurel to a degree as well. I don't get so much of the grapefruit that you can sometimes get from Chinook, but I dare say that might come out in the flavour a little bit more. But you do have a big oily, melony component to this one. Cashmere is just such a distinctive hop, and it tends to dominate if you put it in beers as well. Actually, you've got to be a little bit careful as to what you match Cashmere with, because it can at least in my experience, it can overpower certain other hops. Actually, I don't know for what reason. Actually, maybe the myrcene oil, or maybe I forget how you pronounce that word. Maybe some of the different oils and things like that. Harry at Blue Nose Beer Reviews would be the one to ask about that. But yeah, you get a lovely big oily melony component to this one. There's a big lemony limey kind of quality to it, and you know, there are maybe a few little lighter tropical notes underneath that, like a wee tiny bit of apricot or something like that. But this is a very citrusy leaning IPA more than anything else. But yeah, I think this one is, as I say, going to be very, very interesting. A lot of lemon and lime, and a good little bit of a kind of melony component to this as well. So yeah, let's have a taste of this one then and see how we go on. We'll get the rest of it into the glass. But this one is the Ain't No Half Steppin', 6% New England IPA, hazy IPA, whatever you want to call it, with Laurel, Cashmere and Chinook from Stockholm Brewing Company in the Swedish capital over here in Sweden. It's strange to say that, but yeah, let's get on with this and see how we go. Slange, skull, cheers, and this is the last of the three-parter as well. Yeah. It's interesting that, because it's a lot smoother and it's a lot less pungent than I thought it was going to be. That is a bit unusual. I wasn't expecting that. Yeah. The malty side of this beer is, the malty and yeasty side of this beer is pretty much the same flavour-wise as we've had from the other beers in this series, which would be expected, you know, because it is, I think, as far as I know, it is just the hop bill that they're changing. But it's certainly, you know, it works. It's I think they're onto something. These beers, I think that's something that the Swedish beer market needs, in a sense, is a slightly more kind of farmhousey New England IPA. So maybe Stockholm Brewing are the ones that can provide that. But this one, it does feel a little bit sort of smoother and almost a little touch thicker than the other ones from what I remember. But again, remember, I'm drinking this one a little bit just slightly older than the other ones, but I think it's only about a week or so. It's not that much, so I don't think that's going to make too much of a difference, in fairness. But yeah, this one, it is solid. It is as good as the other ones we've had before, but I think the kind of citrusy notes that I was looking for, they take a wee bit of time to come out of this one, and they come out a little bit more into the aftertaste as well. So yeah, I certainly like how this one goes together. So big thumbs up to Stockholm Brewing for this beer once again. So yeah, let's try and break down the flavour of this beer then. Straight away across the middle of your palate, you get that nice sort of smooth kind of bready base to it, but underneath that you can feel the sort of grainy and crackery components coming out of this one. So yeah, the very backbone of this beer is a sort of Jacob's cream crackery biscuity sort of thing. Oh no, not even biscuity, because biscuits are sweet. It is a sort of crackery base that you get to this beer. But if you go to the front corners of your palate, then move diagonally back, you will feel a few sort of kind of woody elements coming out of this one on the front half of that middle third of your tongue. But yeah, behind that, it's all about the kind of the sort of grainy factors of the beer, absolutely. So, yeah, that does work very nicely, I have to say. I do enjoy these. This slightly more farmhousey thing, as I say, it takes you a little while to get used to this, because if you're used to drinking the kind of the older Swedish IPAs, like the Amazing Haze, the GBG Beer Week, the new and improved GBG Beer Week, and all of these kind of things, those are quite they are quite different to this. They're a lot kind of smoother and slightly sweeter and things like this as well. So it takes you a wee while to kind of adjust your palate to these, but I've grown to like these ones over the last while. But yeah, this is nice. On top of that sort of crackery layer, as you say, you get a nice kind of smooth and kind of soft white bready layer, but it's not massively thick. And then in the middle of your palate, you've got a kind of circle, which you've got a little bit of a circle on this one, which is a wee bit more kind of oaty, if you like. You do get a little bit of that kind of smooth oatiness coming out of the beer. So I do like how that pieces together. So the oatiness, I think, comes out of this one a wee bit more the further you go into the aftertaste. But yeah, in the very centre of the palate there, you've got a nice little bit of you do have a nice little bit of kind of, there is a wee touch of that Werther's Original sort of butter candy type thing. You do get a wee bit of that slight brown sugar component sitting on top of the oaty circle in the middle of your palate. But yeah, as I say, it really leans, the further you go into the aftertaste, you do get more of that kind of grainy and sort of bread crusty character out of this one. But yeah, interesting beer for sure. But on that border region between middle third and back third of your palate, again, you can feel a little bit of a sort of doughy kind of bready build up. In this one you do get that, and it's got a wee bit more graininess. And on the back third of your palate, you can feel it really leans towards the wheat, and then it gives you a little bit of a bitiness too. But sitting on top of the wheat, you get those sort of taller airy ester, the more kind of airy yeasty flavours coming out of this one. So at the back of the front third of your palate, the sort of height of the flavour starts off like this, and as you move further forward, it just gradually condenses down. As you go into the middle third of your palate, it's really quite kind of squashed together like this. But again, that works pretty well. So yeah, I think that describes the kind of malty and yeasty side of this beer fairly well, to be honest. But yeah, hoppy side of things then. Back corners of the palate, there is a little bit of a kind of stronger earthiness in this one, but as you move further forward, it does give you a little bit of herbal quality, so you can really feel that laurel side of things coming out. I have had laurel once or twice before, and I do remember it having this big kind of herbal edge to it, but as you move further forward, you can feel the big spicy component of the cashmere, and underneath that you've got the nice deep pine resins of the Chinook as well. So this beer is actually quite spicy as you reach the front corners of your tongue, which is interesting. And then round the front curve of the palate, it's distinctly kind of lighter and grassy, and a little touch sort of zesty as well. So yeah. So yeah, the green component of this one is quite nice. Little touch spicy, good bit of earthy and herbal quality, and some grassy zesty qualities on this one. But yeah, front third of your palate then. So on that border region between front third and middle third of your palate, you've got a little bit of a kind of doughy, again you get a little bit of that kind of doughy yeasty thing and a bit more grain to it, but the base of that front third of your palate is kind of almost like a yeasty, kind of soft bready type thing, but you still get a bit of the crackery element to it as well, which is quite interesting. So yeah, I think that, yeah, that's the backbone of the front third of your palate. And on top of that, as I always say, you get that nice oily bubble where you get those juicy fruity esters coming out of the beer. If you go towards the very back of that front third of your palate, you do get a bit of the stronger grapefruit from the Chinook. That is definitely present there. But as you move further forward, it's interesting. The grapefruit just kind of fades away a little bit. Then you get the more oily melony components, and then as you move towards the kind of tip, almost the tip of your palate, you'll feel it gradually becomes a little bit more oily and limey, and sitting on top of the lime you have this really quite pungent lemony element out of it. So I think both the cashmere and the laurel are going to give you a little bit of that sort of limey component to it, and then the grassiness, as I say, has a wee bit of a kind of zesty quality to it. So those things kind of merge quite well together. So overall, I would describe this beer as being quite farmhousey and grainy, which is, again, is typical for Stockholm Brewing, and it's got a wee bit more of a kind of citrusy, zesty edge to it as well. So yeah, it's interesting how they've gone about this one, because I mean, if they're going to do a US dry hop one, I mean, they could have just gone with, like, you know, Idaho 7, or they could have done, you know, Citra and Amarillo or Mosaic or something like this. You know, they could have gone for a tropical and an orange side of thing, but they've decided to do something a bit different and kind of focus on a more citrusy edge, if you like. Would have been interesting to put a little bit of Centennial in this one as well and just see what it did, to see if it boosted the lemon even further. But yeah, I think this one works quite nicely, and the cashmere and the laurel are really playing an interesting role in this. You've got quite a bit of herbal character to this, and quite a nice little bit of a yeasty note in there as well. So I really like how that pieces together, absolutely. So yeah, really interesting beer, this one. So thumbs up to Stockholm Brewing once again. Let's round off the review with the mouthfeel then. You know, it's a mid-bodied beer, kind of towards the lighter end of mid-bodied in fairness. Carbonation is very smooth, it's got a nice little bit of wet and a kind of clean mouthfeel to it in a sense, but you know, at the same time you've got all these kind of grainy, bready sort of things sitting underneath it, so maybe it's a bit difficult to describe it as that. But yeah, that's another interesting point to make about this one. So yeah, but the malty base of this beer and the yeasty base, as I say, this one is really quite grainy, and it does get more and more grainy the further you go into the aftertaste. There's a little bit of a kind of smoothness to it. It does have a tiny little touch of sweetness, but yeah, quite a grainy, farmhousey New England IPA, this one overall. There's a good little bit of hoppy bitterness to this one, and I think that's, you know, it's not the most bitter beer. I think it's probably technically only about 30 IBUs or something like that, but the graininess that you get out of this beer gives you the impression of a little bit more. It's almost a little touch spicy in a sense, and sometimes in these beers it's a little bit difficult to draw the line between spiciness and kind of IBU, if that makes sense. And then we've got a little bit of a kind of zesty, fruity component to this one as well. So I mean, overall, this is a very kind of interesting beer, actually. Yeah, this is potentially the most interesting one of the series, because it is quite different to the other two, but definitely the grainiest, and this one just feels a little bit more bitter than some of the other two as well. So yeah, definitely worth trying and contrasting with the other ones, if you like. But yeah, cool to see Stockholm Brewing having a go at some of these kind of New England hazy IPAs while also maintaining that sort of farmhousey trademark that they have. So yeah, I guess we can leave it at that for this review then. So this one was the Ain't No Half Steppin', the last in a sort of 3-part New England IPA release that they did across April of 2021. Once again, thank you for watching my beer reviews. Until the next time, please like, subscribe, share, all the usual YouTube stuff. Let me know your own thoughts on this beer in the comment section below. Let me know what your favourite beers are from Stockholm Brewing, and we will no doubt return to these guys at some point in the near future. There is an interesting beer coming out from them next month that I want to have a look at. Thanks again for watching. See you guys soon. Slange, Skull, cheers. Check out their social media, check out my social media, and I'll catch you again in the next review.